I like it dashiki. Where do you get these dashiki?
I don't know where I got this from. You know, you take a stroll down Lamert Park.
I do. I need
You
to have
find
my
something.
behind out here a little more.
Lamert Park got all the stuff. That's not where I got this from, but
It's okay.
I got this from online
I like
somewhere.
it. I like
I can't remember.
You guys, today we are talking about gentrification on Forever Kayla, and I have two amazing people here from two completely different sides of the spectrums. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
My first, I'm Tre'vell Anderson. I'm a film reporter with the LA Times, and I'm president of the Los Angeles chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists.
And
Hi, I'm Laura Rivas, and I work at Warner Brothers as an associate producer for On Air Creative Services, and I also direct a web series.
so I want to get into this gentrification. We had already been talking a little bit. I just wanted to kind of, you were saying something about Echo Park and there being a...
Oh, so when I shot my web series, a couple of my friends who are part of a nonprofit organization where they teach girls that grew up in Southeast LA how to play instruments, she said, "Oh, you should, chicas rockeras, you should go and film at this cafe." And I was like, okay, cool. So I went, and I was about to give the business owner like $200. You know, I was like, oh, I just appreciate it if you let me shoot here. And he's like, don't worry about it, you can shoot here. And you know, I grew up in Echo Park, and I wanted to have my cafe in Echo Park, but with gentrification it was too expensive to set up shop over there. So I came over here to Southgate. That's where the El Cielito. And it's on the borderline of Huntington Park, where there's a lot of Latino business owners. So yeah, it was great to meet him, and he was super nice. He's like, you know what, I know the struggle, you could film for free. And so that was really great, I appreciate it. So.
Now, something you're saying historically, I know I minored in Spanish journalism, and being a black person automatically kind of makes me, what's going on?
Yeah.
But I just want to say that I remember, because of these high prices that are going on in the inner cities, we talked a little bit earlier about Atlanta and seeing pretty much like what was traditionally black neighborhoods, black people getting priced out of the neighborhood where there are still historically black universities, you know, and now we're seeing Latinas getting priced out of the market, where places like Silver Lake was originally completely like Latin, and now it's like completely white almost, and a lot of hippies there, and I'm like, what's going on? But historically, something that I noticed that went on was the expensiveness. I think is historically people used to price people of color out of the market. I actually just dealt with something myself, and someone didn't want to rent me a space simply because they thought that the neighbors would be uncomfortable with my crowd of people. I don't know what that means, because my crowd of people is completely diverse, but he went up on his price about $3,000, and I think historically there's something to be acknowledged. Yeah, there's something to be acknowledged that people used to get priced out of the market. That's why Latinos had to buy in a certain neighborhood. That's why a lot of black people live in every single major city. They live pretty much on the south side. We talk about south side Chicago, south side of Atlanta is predominantly black. Anything above a certain freeway, even South LA, anything above a certain freeway becomes pretty much Caucasian or white. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know you've experienced it living in different cities.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it is that our communities, black communities, communities of color, they just don't get the investment on a governmental level until there's a reason, right? So what we see happening with South LA now, there's a lot of investment because of the Rams stadium that they're bringing in. And so that's why a lot of the rents now are going up in South LA, because they're preparing, one, for the expansion of the railway line all the way down there, down Crenshaw and stuff, and they're preparing for the building of that stadium down there. And so with the kind of the white folks who are aware of what's happening on in the developmental stage, they go in there, buy the houses now, because they know that in 2-3 years, when all of that is complete, you know, all the other white people gonna come down, so they get in early, right? And so that's what happens with our communities. No one's paying attention to our communities when it's just us. But when other people start to see that there's something that they can get out of it, that's when everyone else wants to move in.
Right. they pretty much price everyone out of the market, but then the reason they bought in the market, what I struggle with, just like Silver Lake, people bought in this market because of the culture that was there, what they couldn't get. Even in San Francisco's full of techies now. There are no more hippies, there are no more people of color there. Traditionally, San Francisco, I'm just gonna say, O.J. Simpson is from San Francisco. Candlestick Park, it's completely black, it's a hood. And if you go to San Francisco now, some of those areas are still the hood, but a lot of it now, what used to be like homelessness and everything, it is completely changed.
And what we find, right, is that a lot of those places that used to be the hoods, they've pushed the people of color into a smaller radius, and so now that's where you have your projects, right? And instead of spreading out like we used to be spread out in these communities, now we're living up on top of each other in these massive projects, and so like the density of communities of color, like it's so dense, we're all on top of each other. And then you go to the suburbs, and like they got yards and stuff. I didn't get a yard till I was 15, you know? But like it's something that for a lot of white communities, it's just something that they're used to because that's kind of the way that they invest in their spaces.
And so my thing though is when people are complaining also about the culture of things and they're saying, you know, where's the culture? And we moved in here because the food's not there anymore. I'm just gonna be honest, the taco trucks. Where is the soul food truck? Where is this and that? Like some people will complain about that yes, I have been in conversations and even living in Atlanta, people are wondering, you know, well, the soul food spot used to be right here, but now it's having to relocate to a little further south. And so you're getting more, I know in Atlanta anyways, because I was just there, you're getting more built up communities more so on the outskirts, which is fabulous, I think, for things. But that's also where you get more of your African American culture. It's like, this is the city. If you know Atlanta, there's a Circle Freeway. What's it, the 285?
Girl, I don't remember those numbers.
Okay, it's the 80, it's the 85. It's the
85, that sounds right.
And I'm very California, so I said the 285.
I think
It's like a loop
yeah.
that truckers will almost kill you on.
Yeah.
So and then you have the city center, and you have two other freeways like 75 and 85. Yes, see, boom. And what I noticed is that this is the center city. All the black people though live below the center city. I'm not saying they don't live above, because I was one that lived above the city, because I kind of like that midtown
Right,
vibe.
it's the black people of a certain,
yeah.
class level, right? They got a nice job, they work in Buckhead, you know, one of those types of situations.
Oh, and I'm not, okay. You know, I was at CNN at the time, so I'm not going to say I wasn't a little bougie. I was like, okay, I'm going to live up here. But I came from California. So for me, I got more diversity by living. It was like a culture shock being a black woman that's from an area where I was, you know, I stuck out as a minority here forever. And so for me, it sounds crazy. I actually, in my home, I was more comfortable being around a diverse group of people, like what we're doing right now, which I know you gotta work on. People like, okay, you're not with your people. I'm with my people. But my people, just like your people, just like everybody's people, when you're in there and you're a majority, it's a different way of life. Yeah. Like it becomes a different kind of competition to it and whatnot. But anyways, so you got the line, you got down below, and you have a lot of African Americans. And what I'm seeing also here, the predominantly Latin communities, it didn't always used to be that way. Even like East LA.
Oh, boy,
East LA, yeah. It used to have diverse.
It used to be a Jewish community, but now it's a Latino community. And of course, with the gentrification, I feel, at least what I've seen, because my sister actually bought a house in Boyle Heights, there's couples that are interracial. So like with her husband is Irish, but they have my niece. And when we've gone to like little bookstore or whatever in Plaza Mariachi, like we've found like a Jewish couple, but then we also found like a Latina who also married a white guy, and a black guy with an Asian girl also living there. So I feel like, I mean, it's like we all said, like it's pushing further, you know, people that are struggling just to make a living, because I know that a lot of the mariachi guys in Mariachi Plaza are not, you know, Latino people will hire them, but I mean, there's less Latino people, so what are they going to do?
Now I have another question, because you guys have all lived in different areas, just like I have. Now, you lived in France for an entire year, and you're a Latina woman, and you're very familiar with your Mexican heritage, your culture, and then your sister marries an Irish guy, and so your whole...
She studied in Italy, though.
And she studied in Italy. And so what I want to know, though, is abroad, are we seeing the same thing abroad? Are we seeing gentrification in France? Is that a thing over there?
Yeah, one thing that I realized living over there for a year that, I thought, oh, France is going to be so different. It's going to be amazing. Like, it's not like America. And I was like, well, no, like, after 6 months, I was like, oh, like, they're racist here too. Because I don't know, like, I just felt because, French people they love culture. And like, in high school, I started learning French in high school. I was like, oh, like, they accepted all these black musicians when in the U.S., they were thrown from clubs and stuff like that, like Louis Armstrong and... but no, I saw the same thing, especially up in Paris. A lot of people from Africa settling in Paris, and it's tough for them to find jobs. And kind of like the same thing in America. It's like, oh, well, learn English, and if you have an accent, like we won't even, or like just the name difference or whatever. Like they're like, oh no, we want you to be called Jean, and I'm like, come on, like what happened to all, like I love this culture, so you're willing to like, listen to their music but not accept who they are and trying to make a better living for themselves. And then a lot of people that I met also said like, oh, well, it's like they're trying to take advantage of the system, because in France, like, it's social healthcare, and I'm trying to remember the name, but like I feel jobs are like that too. Like you get a job, but like everybody kind of paid the same, and you do get like a month vacation and stuff like that, no matter what you do. So, yeah, I feel like a lot of French people feel immigrants are trying to take advantage of the system. But then other people who were like me, I had a friend who was Algerian. Her parents were from Algeria. I did like that people that were first generation French, Algerian, or other countries, they really felt like, oh, don't call me French Algerian, like I'm French. And I was like, oh, we should do that in America. Like we're all Americans, not Mexican American. And not to say that, I don't love my culture, but just we're all Americans.
Now I have to ask you a question as well, because you were born here, right?
Mm-hmm. No, not in LA. I was born in South Carolina. Okay. I'm a military brat. I grew up all over the place. Okay. So I've lived a lot of places. But I grew up in South Carolina. We charted all over the U.S., lived in Germany for a couple of years, went to school in Atlanta, then went up to Stanford, and now I'm here in LA.
Now, how do you feel about what you're seeing in terms of diversity? Being a LGBTQ man, and you're seeing everything changing. And do you feel like, in a way, the LGBTQ community is being pushed in a certain area too? Because I do notice, I don't know if it's like a feel of a safety thing, or if it's more of like, because to me, I don't care who my neighbor is. Like, you know what I mean? Let's just be neighborly. Have some dinner.
Well, so I used to live in the jungle, which, for those who aren't familiar, is a predominantly black part of the city here. And
It's a rough part of the city.
Some might say it's a little rough.
How soon we forget?
It's a lot of black folks there, a lot of Latino folks there. And I ended up moving from there because I kept having, particularly black men threaten my life, because I would walk down the street like this. I'd be running or just going to my car or whatever the case may be. And, people want to share their feelings about how I'm living my life, right? So to the point of
But you're living your life.
Listen.
Okay, so there we go.
It's gonna happen, right? But I had to move to a community where I felt safe. And so you do find like a lot of LGBTQ people and a lot of LGBTQ affirming people, right, live around the West Hollywood area, or they live in the mid-city area. And part of that is a motivation of safety. But again, it's this conversation we're having with gentrification around class and around race. A lot of those folks who have the ability to live in West Hollywood are white. And they have a certain level of access and a certain class that allows them to live in the expensive-ass city that is West Hollywood. I can't afford West Hollywood.
I can't afford West Hollywood. If you guys don't know, if you don't know where West Hollywood is, West Hollywood is the borderline of Beverly Hills. Let me just leave it right there.
It's just so expensive for like even just like a 1-bedroom or a studio apartment.
And that doesn't guarantee you get parking.
You won't get parking.
You have to pay for parking.
You have to pay for parking separately.
It could be $100.
You'll be paying $3,000 for a studio apartment in West Hollywood. But again, you know, sometimes you pay a little extra because you want to feel safe. And so I understand it.
And now, historically, with feeling safe and things like that, what I've seen is like, my dad's from Compton, you know, so I'm a product of someone from somewhere like that. What I've seen is that my grandmother, who remembers the Watts riots, like we can go way back to the Watts riots. And what I remember is her saying that Compton used to be a white neighborhood, historically, if we go back far enough. And then it became a black neighborhood, and it was a very clean black neighborhood. Like it was a suburban black neighborhood. If we were in Atlanta, we could compare it to, like, what's the area we compare it to, like a thriving black neighborhood, like Compton.
Vine City used to be thriving. I mean, there are certain parts of Atlanta, right, that used to be thriving. But you're right. I think historically you're right? A lot of the communities that we look at today and we say are historically black, you actually go back further than they were historically white, right?
Now they're becoming white.
But then
Yeah.
integration started happening,
Yeah.
right? And black folks started, you know, because of laws and civil rights and all that, moving into white communities. And then the white people kept running further away.
And do you think that's because of safety? Do you think that really sometimes in our hearts, we hate to admit it though, but right now race is a hot thing. Do you think people are really uncomfortable with being around someone different? Because even I admitted a little earlier that I'm used to diversity. So for me in a comfort zone, I feel like really happy to live around people of color. I feel comfortable living around a couple white people here and there, you know, LGBTQ, like that's my comfort because that's who I am as a person, that's how I grew up. So do you think it's a comfort thing? Do you think it's a comfort thing, like that we stay in our communities, or is it because we're trying to relate to something or we want to have it catered to us?
Well, I do feel like, especially a lot of people that, you know, are transplants here, they're like, oh my God, LA is so segregated. You know, there's different communities, which is true. And it feels nice to be around, you know, Latinos and stuff like that. But like yourself, after high school and going to study up in the valley and meeting different people, like, to be honest, I never met a Jewish person until I went to college. And so I thought that was great. Like, I was learning. So I like to be around diverse people. And I think LA should be more integrated, and everybody should live in different neighborhoods. But it's difficult, you know.
I think it's a perception of safety, right? Like you think that you're more safe because, you know, we're around black folks. We think that we're more safe and because, you know, white people are out here shooting us like crazy, right? Or white people, they think that they're more safe around people that look like them. But when it comes down to, you know, everybody commits crime. Black, white, green, in between, right? And so I think that's why I say I just think it's a perception. And it's built on some prejudices, and it's built on these presumptions of innocence and worth based on what you look like, where you grew up, who your mom and them is, right? But when in reality, you know, I'm looking at everybody in here the same.
Right.
Because y'all all probably stole at one point in your life.
I did.
No matter what your color
I
is.
stole some bubble gum.
And so I just think it's like people are problematic. We have grown up in particular experiences that color, you know, how we look out on life and see the world. The goal, though, right, is for you to judge everyone equally. You know, I always say that white people steal too. Okay, they're just not going to jail as much as we going to jail for it, right?
Because they don't get looked at when they walk in the store.
Exactly.
I get looked at if I walk in
Exactly.
Bloomingdale's and I have the money to buy something. People are like, all of a sudden, can I help you with something?
No, you can't help me.
I know you
But
get
that's
it
my
too.
point. But that's literally my point.
But I'm sad that happens to you all the time. Like, you know, yeah.
It's not all the time. It's gotten better.
Yeah.
But I will say, depending on what neighborhood I'm in, if I go to South Orange County, if I go to Laguna, if I go to Beverly Hills, if I'm seen in Buckhead in certain neighborhoods, I haven't been to New York yet, but if I'm in Manhattan somewhere, I'm sure that if I'm in a certain store to spend a certain amount of money, that I will, even though I have a certain amount, I may have more money than the person asking me if I need help in my bank account, which I probably do because they're working in that store. Not to throw any shade. So when when you looking at me, I'm looking at you like, what do your pockets look like?
It reminds me of a story that Oprah has told before. She was overseas somewhere. I think it was
remember
like
that story. She was in
Scotland or
Sweden,
something.
I think.
Sweden, yeah, one of those.
It's in the news. I already talking about it.
Right, and she went into this. I think it was like a purse store or something, and she wanted to look at a purse that was on the wall, and the lady was like, "Oh, I think you want this purse," and which was a cheaper purse. This is Oprah. Oprah got all the money in the world.
She can buy that store. I can buy every bag in this
She
store.
can have her job if she wanted it.
I can buy a piece of this country.
And so it happens to everybody, and it's not like just it can happen to everyone, and it's not just a race thing. It's a class thing, but it goes back to that perception. You see a black person walking in the store, and for whatever reason, because of what you've seen in the media, because what you see in music videos or in film or whatever, you just feel that that's the expectation of black folks or brown folks, and it's not necessarily the case. You need to be watching that white woman who's walking behind me.
How can we make sure that we're always trying to continue to be inclusive of everyone? What can we do?
I feel like LA has changed a lot this last 10 years, because that's when I came back from France, and I was just like, oh, I really don't want to drive everywhere. Like, I had basically 9 months of not being inside a car. Like, I was always on a train or a bus. And so I'm really glad that, Ciclavia, which is basically a thing that started in Colombia, I believe, and they closed down the streets, and you could run, walk, use your bike or whatever, and more musicians are coming out and playing music, and it's all over LA. Like, there's one in the Valley, there's one in downtown. I think the one where I grew up happened like 2 years ago. So maybe those types of events where people can check out local businesses and stuff like that can really help.
Well, this is another time we're going to have to, because I got something else with this, because I'm like technically, historically sitting in Mexico. But that's a whole nother, like, I'm not even going to go there because but yet we pushing everybody, anyways. What do you think?
I think it comes down to money and where we spend our dollars, even when we move into these communities that we don't historically perhaps belong to, in the communities that we didn't grow up in. And so it's like, are you supporting the local businesses? Are you supporting the mom and pop shop, on the corner, or are you going to 7-Eleven? Are you supporting, the local taco stand right there? Or are you going to this bougie restaurant that just started, 2 weeks ago? And so it's about putting your money into the kind of entities that have been in this community long before you got there, making sure that they, stay alive.
Gotcha. Just like I want to know where he got his dashiki from. So if anybody sees this on him and they know, please mention, let me know that this is.
I'm gonna figure it out. I'll send it to you.
Okay, let me know. Okay. Well, you guys, thank you for joining me. Talked about gentrification a little bit. If you guys have something else that you want to hear us talk about, email us in, reach out, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for